Hi, scene breakdown here. Today, I'm going to explain a horror movie called Grafted. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in China, where a young girl named Wei is drawing a flower she saw in her father's diary. Her father, a scientist, explains that it's a corpse flower, a rare plant that emits a strong odor to attract flies. We then notice that both father and daughter have large scars on their cheeks. However, the father excitedly informs Wei that he has invented something that will make them beautiful. Next, he removes a piece of rat's skin and injects it with a special liquid he has created. He then places the skin on his own cheek and watches in amazement as it miraculously heals his scar. Overjoyed at his successful experiment, he revels in the moment. However, things take a terrifying turn when his skin begins to regenerate uncontrollably. It eventually covers his mouth, leaving him in a state of panic. Desperately, he cuts it off with a scalpel, but the skin rapidly grows back. Wei, horrified by the sight, tries to help her father. In a desperate attempt to remove the excess skin, she begins stabbing him. Unfortunately, in the process, she unintentionally kills him. The scene then transitions to many years later. Wei has grown into a young adult and, like her father, is a brilliant scientist. Though she has inherited his intelligence, one could argue that his experiments were anything but genius. She currently lives with her relatives, who treat her poorly and consider her a weirdo. One day, Wei receives a scholarship opportunity to study at a prestigious university in New Zealand. She accepts the offer without hesitation, eager to start a new life. Upon arriving in New Zealand, Wei is picked up by her father's sister, Aunt Ling. The woman is overjoyed to see her, and they share an emotional reunion. On the way home, Aunt Ling informs Wei that she is separated from her husband and now lives with her daughter, Angela. She also reveals that her work keeps her away frequently, meaning that Wei and Angela will mostly be alone in the house. Upon their arrival, Aunt Ling introduces Wei to Angela, who greets her casually and then walks away. Wei heads to her room, where she sets up a shrine for her late father and speaks to him, holding on to the past that haunts her. The next morning, Wei arrives for her first day at university. As she navigates the unfamiliar campus, she encounters a homeless, disfigured man named John. She asks him for directions to the science building, which he kindly provides. They introduce themselves before Wei leaves for class. In the next scene, we see a science professor named Dr. Paul delivering a lecture. Angela, who is quite popular, is sitting with her best friends, Eve and Jasmine, while Wei sits alone in the back. As class progresses, Dr. Paul distributes the test results. To everyone's surprise, Wei is the only student to score a perfect 100. The other students are taken aback, realizing that the new girl is far from dumb. If anything, she might be the smartest among them. After class, Wei visits the science lab to continue her research using her father's old notebook. Dr. Paul catches her in the act, and she quickly apologizes for intruding. However, he notices the notebook, written in Chinese, and asks about it. Wei explains that it contains her father's research, which she is determined to complete. Impressed by her dedication, the professor offers her a position as his lab assistant, stating that if she performs well, he may allow her to work on her own research. Thrilled by the opportunity, Wei immediately accepts. Later, Dr. Paul conducts some online research and discovers that Wei's father had been working on an experimental skin grafting procedure. The next day, Wei notices Angela, Eve, and Jasmine hanging out and decides to approach them. Angela, clearly displeased, reluctantly introduces her to the others. Hoping to bond, Wei invites them to lunch to try her favorite Chinese dishes. The girls are initially hesitant, but eventually agree. During the meal, Wei seems genuinely happy and even takes a selfie with the girls. However, they are unimpressed. Angela, embarrassed by her cousin, refuses to eat anything. Eventually, she and Eve rudely leave without touching their food. Only Jasmine shows some kindness. Before leaving, she tries a bit of the meal and comments on how delicious it is. On her way home, Wei encounters John again. They chat for a while and she opens up about her scars, revealing that she is working on something to help people like them. John, however, assures her that she is beautiful, just as she is. Later, Dr. Paul offers Wei a ride home. He expresses his excitement about her research and insists that they can accomplish great things together. He suggests that they start working the next morning, and Wei eagerly agrees. In the following days, Wei and Paul work together on their experiments, but they fail to achieve any significant breakthroughs. Frustrated, Wei concludes that they need a binding agent to merge the skin tissue, but she has no idea what it could be. Dr. Paul grows increasingly irritated, suspecting that the project might be a lost cause. One day while working, Jasmine arrives and asks Dr. Paul if he is hiring another lab assistant. Without hesitation, he agrees, and in doing so, he replaces Wei without a second thought. Hurt and disappointed, Wei watches as Jasmine takes her place. Later, Jasmine approaches Wei and assures her that she never intended to steal her position. She also encourages Wei to stop hiding her scars with a scarf, reassuring her that she is beautiful, just as she is. Touched by Jasmine's kindness, Wei begins to see her in a different light. As Wei's attention drifts, she notices a picture of a corpse flower, which sparks an idea. She sneaks into a botanical garden and steals a few samples, hoping they might serve as the binding agent she has been searching for. That night, Wei returns to the lab to experiment with the flowers. Meanwhile, in another room, Paul is revealed to be intimately involved with Eve, implying that he may be using her for his own gain. Back in the lab, Wei removes a piece of skin from her thigh and mixes it with her new formula. She then reattaches the skin to her leg and injects the substance. To her amazement, the skin melds together as if it were healing naturally. Excited by her discovery, Wei rushes to inform Paul about the breakthrough. However, when she shows him her thigh, Eve walks in and misinterprets the situation. Furious, she takes a picture and then drags Wei away, claiming that they are having a girls' night. In her haste, Wei leaves behind her father's diary. Paul notices it and contacts a friend to help him translate the writings. Moments later, Angela receives Eve's picture, showing Wei with her thighs exposed in the lab. Misunderstanding the context, Angela becomes enraged. She rushes home to confront her cousin, but Wei is nowhere to be found. Elsewhere, Eve takes Wei to a secluded location and accuses her of trying to seduce Paul. Wei denies the accusation, but Eve refuses to believe her. In an act of cruelty, Eve leaves Wei stranded in the middle of nowhere and drives off. Hours later, Wei finally makes it home on foot, only to find her father's shrine destroyed. Angela, still seething, accuses her of sleeping with Paul. The confrontation escalates into a physical altercation, during which Angela gains the upper hand and begins choking Wei. Desperate to free herself, Wei grabs a nearby chopstick and stabs Angela in the eye, killing her instantly. And the horror continues. Aftermath, Wei immediately regrets her actions, but tells herself that she can still fix this. Desperate to make things right in her own twisted way, she drags Angela's lifeless body to the bathroom. With shaky hands, she removes a thin layer of skin from Angela's face, carefully peeling it away like a mask. Then, she injects it with the mysterious substance she had created, her heart pounding with anticipation. She applies the treated skin to her own face, feeling an almost electric sensation as the substance takes effect. Within moments, she undergoes a shocking transformation, her features shifting and molding until she becomes the perfect replica of Angela. She stares into the mirror, mesmerized by the power of the flowers that had made this possible. With an eerie smile, she admires her new face and whispers, "Those are some powerful flowers." The thrill of her success fills her with pride. When Antling arrives home later that evening, she sees Wei and assumes her to be her daughter. Suspicion does not even cross her mind. Wei, feeling triumphant, decides at that moment that she will live as Angela from now on. The next morning, Wei heads to the university, slipping effortlessly into Angela's life. She revels in the newfound popularity and attention, blending seamlessly with Angela's friends. Eve and Jasmine chat with her as if nothing has changed. At one point, Wei accidentally uses a 3-syllable word, an intellectual slip that momentarily threatens her disguise. However, she quickly realizes her luck. Her friends are too clueless to question her vocabulary. Later that day, Wei, still playing the role of Angela, goes on a date with Angela's boyfriend. They head to a secluded spot in the woods where he confesses his deep love for her. Wei, who has never experienced romance before, feels a strange mixture of emotions. She decides to go along with it, allowing the moment to unfold. As they begin making out, an unforeseen disaster strikes. Angela's face, the stolen skin, begins to slip off. It detaches completely and lands onto the horrified boyfriend. He recoils in shock, staring at the grotesque sight of Wei's real face. His panic takes over, and he scrambles to escape, running blindly through the forest. In his haste, he stumbles over the edge of a cliff. His scream echoes through the air before he vanishes from sight. Wei stands frozen, horrified by the unexpected turn of events. Panic sets in as she rushes back home. Upon returning, Wei hurriedly retrieves the remaining substance and sticks Angela's face back onto her own. But a new fear grips her. She realizes that the liquid is running low. Desperate, she searches for her father's notebook, determined to recreate the formula. She scours the entire house but finds nothing. The dreadful realization dawns upon her. Paul must have taken it. She tries calling the professor multiple times, but he doesn't answer. The silence only fuels her suspicions. She finally understands. Paul intends to use her father's formula and take full credit for the invention. Her blood boils at the thought. She must act quickly. The next day, Wei hatches a new plan. She invites Eve to her house for a sleepover, masking her sinister intentions with a friendly demeanor. When Eve arrives, she immediately comments on the foul odor lingering in the air. Wei dismisses her concern with a casual lie, blaming the smell on her weird cousin's shrine. Eve tries to ignore the discomfort, but an unsettling feeling creeps over her. Moments later, her instincts scream at her. Something is terribly wrong. Nervously, she says she wants to leave, but before she can react further, Wei grabs a heavy object and attempts to smash her head. Eve dodges in terror and bolts outside, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She frantically searches for a hiding spot and plunges into the pond in front of the house, submerging herself beneath the water. But Wei is relentless. With calculated precision, Wei retrieves a drill machine and stalks toward the pond. A cruel smile plays on her lips as she plunges the drill into the water, aiming for Eve's skull. The machine roars to life, the vibrations sending ripples across the water's surface. A final, chilling scream escapes from beneath the pond before silence falls. Eve is dead. Afterward, Wei removes Eve's skin and carefully places it over her own. She even dyes her hair blonde to complete the illusion. The next day, she walks into the university, now masquerading as Eve. Her transformation is flawless. However, trouble is brewing. Police officers have arrived on campus, investigating Angela's disappearance following the discovery of her boyfriend's body. Wei's nerves are on edge. She decides not to take any risks and rushes home before anyone can grow suspicious. That evening, Wei returns to the house and gets to work. She methodically chops up the bodies of Angela and Eve, disposing of the remains by tossing them into the pond. As she wipes her blood-stained hands, she checks Eve's phone and makes a shocking discovery. A compromising photo taken days ago in the lab. She immediately recognizes its value. Wei sends the photo to campus authorities, accusing the professor, Paul, of having an inappropriate relationship with a student. The fallout is swift. Paul's reputation is tarnished, and he is fired from his job. But it hardly matters to him. He is on the verge of a scientific breakthrough that will change the world. Meanwhile, Paul finally perfects the formula. He texts his girlfriend Eve to share his success and invites her over to celebrate. But Paul is unaware. It is not Eve who will be arriving, but Wei, still wearing Eve's face. Disguised, Wei arrives at Paul's home, her mind set on retrieving her father's diary. As Paul pours wine from an expensive bottle stored in a hidden compartment, Wei observes him closely, noting where he keeps his valuables. Taking advantage of a distraction, she opens the compartment and finds a vial of the perfected formula. Pretending to have a headache, she hastily leaves, clutching the stolen vial. Moments later, Paul senses something is wrong. He checks the compartment and finds the vial missing. The realization hits him like a freight train. Eve had never been here. It was Wei, wearing her face. Back home, Wei peels away her disguise and returns to her true self. But her troubles aren't over yet. That evening, Jasmine arrives, visibly distressed. She demands to know where Angela and Eve are. Thinking fast, Wei tells her they're at a sleepover. Jasmine, ever trusting, believes her. Then she makes a grave mistake. She opens the refrigerator. Horror washes over her as she sees Eve's mutated head staring back at her. Before Jasmine can react, Wei lunges forward, wrapping plastic around her head. She struggles, but within moments, she is suffocated to death. Later, Paul arrives at the house. He finds Wei in distress and demands answers. Wei, overcome with rage, blames him for everything, accusing him of stealing her father's work. Paul, unbothered by ethics, smugly declares that he is the lead scientist, and the credit rightfully belongs to him. Feigning defeat, Wei tells him the vial is in the fridge. Paul eagerly opens it, expecting his formula, only to be greeted by Eve's severed head. His stomach churns in horror, but before he can react, Wei stabs him in the neck with a needle, knocking him unconscious. When he wakes, he is strapped to a table, his neck skin removed. Wei injects him with the substance, triggering an uncontrollable tissue regeneration. Paul thrashes in agony as his body spirals out of control. His screams echo through the house, drawing the attention of an old neighbor. Realizing her cover is blown, Wei flees into the night. She runs aimlessly as police pursue her. Desperate, she hides in a subway station, where she encounters John, a homeless man. Begging for his help, he hides her under his blanket. But in her panic, the vial in her possession ruptures, spilling onto both of them. The liquid reacts violently, fusing their bodies into a grotesque, four-eyed hybrid. Sometime later, Wei is still missing. Meanwhile, Angela, Eve, and Jasmine's bodies are found, and Paul remains in critical condition. One night, Antling sees a horrifying sight, a misshapen, monstrous figure beneath a blanket. It is Wei and John, fused together forever. Antling runs, screaming as the nightmare reaches its end.